discovery and connection. The twin suns of Epsilon Eridani cast long shadows. Across the alien landscapist, Darp Lara Chin trudged through the rust-colored sand. Her exosuit sensors beat softly, analyzing the atmosphere and scanning for signs of life. After 3 months on this desolate world, she had grown accustomed to the constant disappointment of finding nothing but microbes and haughty lens. Lara paused at the crest of a dune, her eyes sweeping across the horizon. The planet's vast desert stretched as far as she could see, broken only by the occasional rocky outcropping or twisted, leafless tree. She sighed, her breath fogging the inside of her helmet. Another thrilling day in paradise, she muttered to herself, her voice crackling over the suit's cowl system. As she prepared to turn back to the research station, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Life froze, her heart racing there in the shadow of a jagged rock formation. Something was moving slowly, cautiously. She approached. Her suit's sensors went wild, detecting complex organic compounds and unfamiliar energy signatures. As she drew closer, she could make out 2 small forms huddled together in the sand. Lara gasped. The creatures before her were unlike anything she had ever seen. They resembled Earth leopard in shape, but their fur shimmered with an otherworldly iridescence, shifting colors like oil on water. Their eyes, large and luminous, glowed with an eerie blue light. Impossible, Lyra whispered, her scientific mind reeling. This planet shouldn't be able to support complex life, let alone creatures of this size and apparent intelligence. Yet here they were, 2 alien cubs, staring up at her with a mixture of sea curiosity and fear. As she knelt beside them, one of the creatures chirped softly. The sound sent a shiver down Lyra's spine. It was plaintive, almost mournful. Without thinking, she reached out a gloved hand. "It's okay," she said softly. "I won't hurt you." To her amazement, the creature nuzzled against her palm. Its fur felt like silk, warm even through the insulated material of her glove. The other cup embol, and by its siblings' trust, crept closer. Lyra's mind raced. Protocol dictated that she should report this discovery immediately, call for backup, and initiate containment procedures. But as she looked into those glowing blue eyes, she felt something shift inside her. These weren't just test subjects or biological curiosities. They were living, feeling beings, and they were alone. With trembling hands, Lyra opened the environment-controlled compartment. On her exosuit, it was meant for collecting samples, but it would serve as a makeshift carrier. Gently, she scooped up the 2 cubs. "I'm sorry," she murmured as she placed them inside, "but I can't lay you out here." The journey back to the research station was a blur. Lyra's mind whirled with questions and possibilities. How had these creatures evolved on this barren world? Where were their parents? And what would happen when she reported her discovery? As the station's airlock hissed open, Lyra made a decision that would change her life forever. She bypassed the main lab and headed straight for her private quarters. Only when the door was securely locked behind her did she open the compartment and release the cubs. They tumbled out onto her bunk, chirping and nuzzling each other in the artificial light of the station. Their fur seemed to glow even brighter, cycling through a dazzling array of colors. Lyra removed her helmet, her dark hair falling in sweaty tangles around her face. She knew she was breaking every rule in the book. But as she watched the cubs explore their new surroundings, she couldn't bring herself to care. "What am I going to do with you?" she asked softly. One of the cubs looked up at her and made a sound that was halfway between a purr and a trill. It was the most beautiful thing Lyra had ever heard. Of the next few weeks, Lyra threw herself into caring for and studying the alien cubs. She converted her quarters into a makeshift habitat, using spare parts and salvaged equipment to create a space that mimicked the conditions outside as closely as possible. The cubs grew at an astonishing rate, their intelligence becoming more apparent with each passing day. They learned to respond to simple commands, showed problem-solving skills far beyond what Lyra would have expected, and seemed to communicate with each other in ways she couldn't begin to understand. Lyra found herself working around the clock, splitting her time between her official duties and her secret charges. She slept little, sustained by a mix of scientific fascination and something deeper, more Primal, when she looked at the cubs, she felt a fierce protectiveness that surprised her one night as she sat cross-legged on the floor, watching the cubs play. Lyra realized with a start that she had begun to think of them as her children. The thought should have terrified her, but instead it filled her with a warm glow. "Your names," she said aloud. The cubs paused in their rough, housing their glowing eyes fixed on her. "How about Nova and Quasar?" The newly christened Nova chirped happily while Quasar tilted his head in what Lyra had come to recognize as curiosity. Lyra laughed, the sound echoing in the small room. I know, not very creative, but hey, I'm xenobiologist, not a poet." As the cubs curled up together for sleep, Lyra's smile faded. She knew she couldn't keep them hidden forever. Sooner or later, someone would discover her secret, and when that happened, Nova and Quasar would be taken away, subjected to endless tests and experiments. The thought made her chest tighten with fear and anger. She had to protect them. But how? Lyra was just one woman alone on a distant planet with limited resources and no allies. As she stroked Nova's shimmering fur, an idea began to form in her mind. It was risky, possibly even crazy, but it might be their only chance. Lyra stood, her jaw set with determination. She would need to plan carefully, gather supplies, and find a way to communicate with the orbiting ship without arousing suspicion. But she would do it. Somehow she would find a way to escape with Nova and Quasar. As she began to work, Lyra felt a surge of energy, unlike anything she had experienced before. For the first time in her life, she had something worth fighting for, something that mattered more than her career or her own safety. She glanced at the sleeping cubs, their fur pulsing with soft light in the dimness of the room. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I'll keep you safe, I promise." Little did Lyra know that her promise would be tested sooner and more severely than she could have imagined, for even as she plotted their escape, forces beyond her comprehension were converging on the lonely planet, drawn by the unique energy signature of the alien cubs. The true nature of Nova and Quasar, and the role they would play in shaping the destiny of not just Lyra, but the entire galaxy, was about to be revealed. And nothing would ever be the same again. Challenges and growth. The makeshift nursery in Leah's quarters hummed with an otherworldly energy. Nova and Qua had doubled in size over the past month, that iridescent fur now rippling with complex patterns that seemed to shift and change with their moods. Lyra sat cross-legged on the floor, watching in fascination as the cubs engaged in what looked like a game of tag, their movements almost too quick for her eyes to follow. "Incredible," she murmured, making notes on her datat. The cubs' rate of growth and development far exceeded anything she had ever encountered in her years of cold biological research. But it wasn't just their physical changes that amazed her. Nova and Quor displayed problem-solving abilities that rivaled those of adult humans, and their capacity for learning seemed limitless. A sharp beat from her communicator shattered the moment of calm. Lyra's heart raced as she checked the message. It was from Dar. "Marcus Rees, the research station director. Dark Chen, please report to my office immediately. We need to discuss some anomalies in your recent reports." Lyra swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. She had been fabricating data for weeks, trying to keep her superiors from discovering the truth about Nova and Quasar. But it seemed her luck had finally run out. "I'll be right back," she told the cubs, her voice trembling slightly. Nova chirped in response, his glowing eyes filled with what Lyra could have sworn was concern. The walk to Dart Ree's office felt like a march to the gallows. Lyra's mind raced, trying to come up with plausible explanations for the discrepancies in her work, but as she stepped into the sterile white wall room, she knew it was hopeless. Dar Rees, a tall, stern-faced man with graying hair, looked up from his holographic display. His expression was unreadable. "Dart Chen," he said, his voice clipped, "would you care to explain why your atmospheric analysis reports have been showing such creative results?" Lyra opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She had never been a good liar, and now, faced with the weight of her deception, she felt her resolve crumbling. Dar Reeve sighed, his stern facade softening slightly. "Lyra, I've known you for years. You're one of our best researchers. Whatever is going on, whatever you found, you can trust me." For a moment, Lyra was tempted to confess everything, but then she thought of Nova and Quasar, of the wonder and joy they had brought into her life. She thought of the danger they would be in if the wrong people discovered their existence. "I'm sorry, sir," she said at last, straightening her spine. I've been struggling with some of the equipment. I'll recalibrate and rerun the tests immediately. Dar Reeve studied her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing. See that you do, he said finally, and Lyra, remember that we're all on the same team here. No discovery is worth compromising your integrity or the mission. As Lyra left the office, her legs felt weak with relief, but she knew this was only a temporary reprieve. She had to act fast if she wanted to keep Nova and Quasar safe back in her quarters. Lyra found the cubs waiting for her. To her surprise, they seemed agitated, pacing back and forth and emitting soft, distressed sounds. "What's wrong?" she asked, kneeling beside them as if in response. Nova pressed his head against her hand. Suddenly, Lyra's mind was filled with a cascade of images and emotions. She saw herself through the cubs' eyes, felt their love and trust, but also their growing awareness of the danger they were in. Gasping, Lyra pulled her hand away. You can communicate telepathically," she whispered, awe and fear whirring within her. Quasar chirped, his fur rippling with shades of blue and purple. Lyra understood without words. "Yes, but only now are we strong enough to reach you." The implications were staggering. If Nova and Quasar could communicate like this, what other abilities might they possess? And what would happen if that power fell into the wrong hands? As if in answer to her unspoken question, an alarm blared through the station. Lyra rushed to her computer terminal, her heart pounding. The screen showed a large ship entering orbit around the planet, a ship that didn't belong to their research mission. "Attention, all personnel," Dar Reeve's voice crackled over the intercom. "We have an unidentified vessel approaching. All non-essential staff are to report to their designated safety areas immediately." Lyra's blood ran cold. She knew in her bones that this ship was here for Nova and Quasar. Somehow someone had discovered their existence. "We have to go," she told the cubs, her voice tight with fear now, as Lyra hurriedly packed supplies and keyed in the override codes for the station's small emergency shuttle. Her mind raced. Where could they go? How would they survive? But as she looked at Nova and Quasar, their eyes glowing with trust and determination, she knew she had no choice. They were her family now, and she would do whatever it took to protect them. The journey to the shuttle bay was a nightmare of flashing lights and blaring alarms. Lyra's heart pounded in her ears as she carried Nova and Quasar, now too large to fit in her sample containers. Every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat, every sound a harbinger of discovery. Just as they reached the shuttle, a figure stepped out from behind a column. Lyra froze, her arms tightening protectively around the cubs. "I knew you were hiding something," Dar Reeves said softly, his eyes wide as he took in the alien creatures. "But this, Lyra, do you have any idea what you've done?" "Please," Lyra begged, her voice cracking. "They're not just specimens, Marcus. They're intelligent, they're special. If the wrong people get their hands on them." Doris held up a hand, silencing her. For a long moment, he simply stared at Nova and Quasar, his expression unreadable. Then, to Lyra's shock, he stepped aside. "Go," he said. "I'll buy you as much time as I can. But Lyra, be careful. Whatever those creatures are, they're going to change everything." Tears of gratitude stung Lyra's eyes as she rushed past him into the shuttle. As the door sealed behind them and the engines roared to life, she caught one last glimpse of Dar Reeves through the view screen. He gave her a small nod before turning to face the approaching security team. The shuttle shot out of the bay and into the star-studded blackness of space. Lyra's hand shook as she plotted a course away from both the research station and the mysterious ship in orbit. Nova and Quasar huddled close to her, their fur pulsing with swirling patterns of gold and silver through their telepathic link. Lyra felt their mix of excitement and fear, mirroring her own tumultuous emotions as the shuttle accelerated to light speed, leaving the only home they had known far behind. Lyra realized that their journey was just beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever secrets Nova and Quasar held, she knew that her life would never be the same. The stars streak by outside the view screen, each one in a potential haven or hidden danger. Lyra took a deep breath, steeling herself for the unknown future that awaited them. "Well," she said softly, scratching behind Nova's ears, "I guess we're in this together. Now let's go find out what you two are really capable of." Quasar trilled in agreement, his glowing eyes fixed on the vastness of space before them. And as the shuttle hurtled through the cosmos carrying its precious cargo of 2 alien cubs and 1 determined human, the next chapter of their extraordinary adventure began to unfold. Revelations and conflict. The stolen shovel drifted in the shadow of a gas giant, its systems powered down to avoid detection. Inside, Lyra sat cross-legged on the floor, her eyes closed in concentration. Nova and Quasar lounged nearby, their iridescent fur rippling with subtle patterns of blue and green. It had been 3 months since their daring escape from the research station. In that time, Lyra had pushed her understanding of Cenobi biology to its limits as she studied the rapidly maturing cubs, but more importantly, she had learned to open her mind to their telepathic communication. "That's it," she murmured, feeling the familiar tingle of their thoughts brushing against her consciousness. "Show me again." Through their mental link, Lyra saw flashes of a world unlike any she had ever imagined. Vast crystal spires reached towards a purple sky, while beams of pure energy danced through the air. She felt an overwhelming sense of harmony and purpose, tinged with a deep sadness. As the vision faded, Lyra opened her eyes, blinking away tears. "Your home world," she said softly. "It's beautiful. But what happened to it?" Nova chirped softly, his eyes glowing with an intense blue light. Through their bond, Lyra understood. Destruction, invasion, a terrible force that consumed everything in its path. "And you too, you're the last of your kind." Lyra's heart ached at the wave of loneliness and loss that washed over her from the cubs. Quasar stood stretching his life body. He was nearly as tall as Lyra now, his once cuddly form having developed into a sleek, powerful physique. Not last, he communicated hope. Before Lyra could ask what he meant, the shuttle's proximity alarm blared to life. She scrambled to the console, her heart racing. A massive ship had just dropped out of hyperspace less than 1,000 kilometers away. "No," Lyra whispered, recognizing the configuration. It was a Galactic Confederation warship, undoubtedly sent to track down the stolen alien specimens reported by the research station. Nova and Quasar pressed close to her, their fur bristling with streaks of alarmed red. "We must not be captured," they impressed upon her mind, with an urgency that made her head spin. I know," Lyra muttered, her fingers flying over the controls as she prepared for emergency maneuvers, but we outgunned. Her words were cut off as a beam of energy lanced out from the warship, enveloping the shuttle in a shimmering field. The controls went dead, and Lyra felt a sickening lurch as they were drawn inexorably towards the larger vessel. "A tractor beam," she said, her voice hollow with defeat. "I'm so sorry. I failed you." But Nova and Quark response surprised her. "Not your fault. They communicated time to reveal truth before Lyra could ask what they meant." The shuttle shuddered as it was pulled into the warship's docking bed. She heard the hiss of the airlock engaging, followed by the heavy thud of armored boots approaching. "Whatever happens," Lyra said, turning to face her alien companions, "I want you to know that." The shuttle door burst open, and a squad of heavily armed soldiers poured in, their weapons trained on Lyra and the cubs. Behind them strode a tall, imposing figure in an elaborately decorated uniform. "Dar Lion," the man said, his voice cold and authoritative. "I am Admiral Ven of the Galactic Confederation. You are under arrest for theft of valuable xenobiological specimens and violation of quarantine protocols." Lyra stepped in front of Nova and Quasar, her arms spread wide. "They're not specimens," she said defiantly. "They're intelligent beings, and I won't let you." Her words died in her throat as Nova and Quasar suddenly began to glow with an intense, otherworldly light. The soldiers stumbled back, shielding their eyes as the cubs' forms seemed to shimmer and dissolve. When the light faded, Lyra found herself staring not at the familiar feline forms she had come to love, but at 2 tall, luminous beings that seemed to be made of living crystal and energy. Their eyes, still that familiar glowing blue, gazed at her with a mixture of affection and sorrow. "We are sorry for the deception, Lyra," their voices echoed in her mind, "but it was necessary for our survival and growth." Admiral Ven had fallen to his knees, his face a mask of awe and fear. "The Lumina," he whispered, "they're real. The legends were true." Lyra's scientific mind reeled as she processed what she was seeing. The Lumino were a mythical race said to have seed life throughout the galaxy. Before vanishing without a trace, they were supposed to be gods, not the creatures she had raised and loved like her own children. I don't understand, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Why did you choose me? Why all the secrecy, Nova? Or the being that had been Nova stepped forward, its crystalline hand gently touching Lyra's cheek. Our race was nearly destroyed by those who sought to exploit our power. We hid ourselves away, scattering our essence across the stars. But the threat that consumed our world has returned. We needed to be reborn to grow and learn anew. And for that we needed a mother who would love us unconditionally. Tears streamed down Lyra's face as the full weight of their words hit her. She'd have been chosen for a task beyond her wildest imagination, entrusted with the rebirth of a species that could shape the fate of the entire galaxy. Admiral Venn had regained his composure and was now approaching seriously, his earlier aggression replaced by reverent curiosity. If you truly are the Lumina, he said, then you must know of the darkness that has been spreading across the outer system's entire planets. Going dark fleets, vanishing without a trace. Quasar nodded solemnly. The Void Eaters have awakened. Once more they consumed our world, and now they hunger for all life in the cosmos. We have been reborn to stand against them, but we cannot do it alone. The being turned its glowing gaze to Lyra, and she felt a swell of emotions that nearly overwhelmed her: pride, gratitude, and a love deeper than anything she had ever known. You have taught us what it means to be human, Lyra. Nova communicated. The compassion, the determination, the capacity for love in the face of the unknown. These are the weapons we will need in the coming war. Will you stand with us? Lyra looked from the radiant beings before her to the awestruck faces of Admiral Venn and his soldiers. In that moment she understood that her life had been building to this point, preparing her for a destiny she could never have imagined. Yes, she said, her voice strong and clear, whatever comes we face it together. As if in response to her words, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Admiral Venn rushed to a nearby console, his face paling as he read the incoming reports. Multiple unknown vessels have just appeared at the edge of the system, he said, his voice tight with fear. They're consuming everything in their path. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine as she turned to Nova and Quasar. Noted alarm, their crystalline forms pulsed with a fierce, determined light. The Void Eaters have found us, they communicated to everyone present. The true battle for the fate of all life begins now as the warship shuttered and emergency protocols engage. Lyra steeled herself for the challenges ahead. She had started this journey as a lonely xenobiologist on a desolate planet, and now found herself at the center of a cosmic conflict beyond imagining. But as she looked at the being she had raised, at the mix of human and alien faces now turned to her for leadership, she knew that she was exactly where she needed to be. Whatever the Void Eaters were, whatever horrors awaited them, they would face it together as a family. And as the galaxy's last best hope, the stars outside the view screen seemed to darken as the unknown threat approached. Lyra took a deep breath, ready to step into her new role in this unfolding cosmic drama. The next chapter of their extraordinary journey was about to begin, and the fate of entire worlds hung in the balance. Alliance and Resistance, the command center of the Galactic Confederation flagship Horizon, buzzed with frantic activity. Holographic displays flickered with real-time battle data, showing the encroaching darkness that threatened to engulf the entire star system. Lyra stood at the center of it all, her eyes darting between the tactical readouts and the two luminous beings that had once been Nova and Quasar. In the 3 days since the Void Eaters had appeared, she had barely slept, driven by a mix of adrenaline and the weight of her newfound responsibility. The Centauri sector has gone dark, Admiral Venn reported grimly, his usually immaculate uniform now rumpled from days of constant crisis. We've lost contact with over 50 colony worlds. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. The scale of destruction was almost beyond comprehension. She turned to the Lumina, their crystalline forms pulsing with a soft, determined light. There has to be a way to stop them, she said, her voice tight with frustration. You faced these things before. How did your people fight them? Nova's voice echoed in her mind, tinged with sorrow. We did not fight them, Myra. We scattered our essence across the stars, hoping to preserve some fragment of our civilization. But now there is nowhere left to run, so what do we do? Lyra demanded, her scientific mind racing to find a solution. There has to be a weakness, some way. Oh, her words were cut off as the ship shuttered violently. Alarms blared, and the holographic displays flickered with new warnings. Void Eater vessels have breached our defensive line, a young officer shouted, her voice cracking with fear. They're heading straight for us. Lyra's heart raced as she watched the approaching enemy ships on the tactical display. They were unlike anything she had ever seen, vast, writhing masses of darkness that seemed to devour the very light around them. In that moment of crisis, an idea struck her. Light, she whispered, then louder, "That's it, Admiral. I need access to the ship's main deflector array." Now Admiral V looked at her skeptically, but the Lumina approving hum seemed to convince him. "Do it," he ordered. Lyra's fingers flew across the control panel, reconfiguring the deflector to emit a concentrated burst of high-energy photons. It was a long shot based on nothing more than intuition and her observations of the Lumina, but it was all they had. Firing in 3, 2, 1, a blinding beam of pure light lanced out from the horizon, striking the Lid Void Eater's ship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent FL flash, the dark vessel disintegrated. A cheer went up from the crew, but Lyra knew it was far from over. The remaining Void Eaters quickly adjusted their approach, adopting evasive maneuvers that made them harder to target. "We must unite our strengths." Quark voice resonated in Lyra's mind. "The wisdom of the Lumina and the ingenuity of humanity. It is our only hope." Lyra nodded, understanding what needed to be done. She turned to Admiral Ven, her eyes blazing with determination. "Admiral, I need you to broadcast a message to every ship in the fleet, every colony world that can still hear us. Tell them hope is not lost. Tell them to look to the light." As Ven relayed her message, Lyra closed her eyes and opened her mind to the Lumina. She felt that ancient wisdom flood through her, merging with her human intuition and scientific knowledge. In that moment of perfect synthesis, she saw the path forward with crystal clarity. "Reconfigure all deflectors to emit a modulating photonic pulse," she ordered, her voice ringing with newfound authority. "Tune the frequency to match the resonance of the luminous energy signature." As the crew rushed to comply, Nova and Quasar began to glow with an intensity that forced everyone to shield their eyes. Lyra felt their power flowing through her, using her as a conduit to bridge the gap between their two species. The Horizon's deflector array hummed to life, emitting a dazzling display of light that pulsed in perfect harmony with the luminous energy. To Lyra's amazement, other ships in the fleet began to follow suit, their crews inspired by the sight of the legendary beings standing with humanity. A great wave of light swept across the battlefield, each pulse growing stronger as more ships joined the effort. The Void Leers recoiled, their dark forms writhing in apparent agony as they were bathed in the combined radiance of Lumina and human technology. For a moment, Lyra dared to hope that this would be enough, that they had found the key to victory. But then she saw it, a massive shape emerging from the depths of space, dwarfing even the largest Void Eater ships. The very sight of it seemed to dim the stars themselves. The Devour, Nova and Quasar voices echoed with a mix of awe and terror. "The one who consumed our world. It has come to finish what it started." Lyra felt a wave of despair threaten to overwhelm her. How could they possibly stand against something of that magnitude? But as she looked around at the determined faces of the crew, at the proud glowing forms of Nova and Quasar, she knew they had no choice but to try. "This isn't just about saving humanity anymore," she said, her voice carrying across the command center. "This is about safeguarding all life in the galaxy. We may be outnumbered, we may be facing an enemy beyond our comprehension, but we have something they don't. We have each other." She turned to Nova and Qua, feeling the strength of their bond flow through her. "You chose to trust humanity with your rebirth," she said softly. "Now it's time for us to prove worthy of that trust." The Lumina nodded in unison, their crystalline forms resonating with a fierce determination that matched Lyra's own. "Together, we will face the darkness," they communicated to all present. "Together, we will forge a new future for all sentient beings." As the massive form of the Dior loomed ever closer, blotting out the stars, Lyra steeled herself for the greatest challenge of her life. She had started this journey as a solitary researcher on a desolate planet, and now found herself at the heart of a war for the very soul of the cosmos. The next few hours would determine the fate of not just humanity, but of all life in the galaxy. As Lyra began coordinating the combined fleet's defense, she felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. Whatever the outcome, she knew that this was where she was meant to be, standing between the light and the darkness, fighting for a future that seemed almost impossible to imagine. The final battle was about to begin, and Lyra Chin, once a lonely xenobiologist, now the bridge between two great species, was ready to face it head-on. Transformation and legacy. The vast emptiness of space became a canvas of chaos and light as the combined forces of humanity and the Lumina clashed with the Void Eaters. At the heart of the maelstrom, the horizon stood as a beacon of hope, its modified deflector array pulsing with brilliant energy that seemed to push back the encroaching darkness. Lyra's voice rang out clear and confident over the calm channels, coordinating the efforts of the fleet. Her mind worked in perfect synchronicity with Nova and Quasar, their ancient wisdom blending seamlessly with her scientific acumen and human intuition. But even as they fought valiantly, the massive form of the Dior continued its inexorable approach. Entire ships vanished into its swallowed by a darkness so complete it seemed to defy the laws of physics. Our weapons are having no effect, Admiral Vend shouted, his usually composed demeanor cracking under the strain. It's consuming everything we throw at it. Lyra felt a moment of despair threaten to overwhelm her, but she pushed it aside. There had to be a solution, a way to overcome this seemingly invincible foe. She closed her eyes, reaching out through her bond with Illumina, searching for an answer. And then, in a flash of insight, she understood. It's not just consuming matter and energy, she said, her eyes snapping open. It's consuming information possibility itself. That's why our weapons don't work. It's already absorbed every potential outcome of our attacks. Nova's crystalline form pulsed with approval. Yes, Lyra, the diver feeds on certainty, on fixed points in space and time. To defeat it, we must become that which it cannot consume, uncertainty. Lyra whispered, her mind racing quantum superposition on a massive scale. But how can we? Her words were cut off as the ship shuddered violently. The diver was upon them, its vast form blotting out the stars in that moment of crisis. Quasar voice resonated through Laura's mind with a clarity that nearly overwhelmed her. We must merge Lyra, Lumina, and human energy and matter, past and future. Only together can we create a force of pure potential, a being of infinite possibility that the devourer cannot comprehend or consume. Lyra's heart raced as she grasped the magnitude of what they were proposing. It wasn't just a tactical maneuver, it was an evolution, a transformation into something entirely new and unknown. Will I still be me? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. You will be more than you ever dreamed possible, Nova assured her. And yet your essence, your humanity will remain. It is that very quality which makes this union necessary. Lyra took a deep breath, looking around at the faces of the crew, human, alien, all united in their struggle against the darkness. She thought of her journey from solitary researcher to reluctant mother to the linchpin in the battle for galactic survival. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady and clear as alarms blared, and the ship groaned under the strain of the devourer attack. Lyra stepped forward, Nova and Quasar moved to flank her, their crystalline forms beginning to glow with an intensity that forced everyone else to shield their eyes. Lyra felt warmth spread through her body as tendrils of pure energy reached out from the Lumina, enveloping her in a cocoon of light. She gasped as sensations beyond human comprehension flooded her consciousness, the birth of stars, the dance of subatomic particles, the vast tapestry of spacetime itself. The boundaries of her being began to blur, merging with the ancient essence of the Luminae. Yet even as she felt herself dissolving, becoming part of something greater, she held tight to her core, her memories, her loves, her humanity. A blinding flash filled the bridge, forcing even Admiral Vend turn away. When the light faded where Lyra and the Lumina had stood, there was now a single being of breathtaking beauty and power. It was humanoid in shape, yet composed of swirling energy and crystalline structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions. At once its eyes, a familiar glowing blue, held depths of wisdom and compassion that spoke of both human emotion and cosmic understanding. When it spoke, its voice was a harmonious BL of Leah's determination and the luminous ancient resonance. We are the bridge between worlds, the synthesis of thought and energy, the embodiment of infinite potential. A new being turned to face the view screen where the Dior loomed, its darkness seeming to recoil slightly In the face of this unexpected development, with a gesture the merged being of Lyra and the Lumen created a shimmering field of energy that enveloped the entire fleet. "Do not be afraid," it said to the Ostro crew. Embrace uncertainty, become possibility itself. As the field touched each ship, they began to change, becoming fluid, existing in multiple states. Simultaneously, the Devor attacks passed harmlessly through them, unable to fix upon any single reality. The merged being raised its hands, and a wave of pure potential rolled forth where it touched. The Void Eaters, they seemed to unravel their fixed nature, unable to withstand the assault of infinite possibility. The Devor, for the first time in its ancient existence, hesitated. It could not consume that which refused to be defined, could not absorb the endless cascade of potential realities that now confronted it. In that moment of hesitation, the merged being struck, it dove into the heart of the Devourer, becoming a spark of pure creation in the depths of oblivion. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, nothing happened. Then, with a silent flash that rippled across the fabric of spacetime itself, the Devor burst apart. Where once there had been all-consuming darkness, now there was light, countless pin-pricks of newborn stars, galaxies, swirling into being as the stunned fleet watched in awe. The merged being reappeared on the bridge of the horizon, its form flickered, and for a moment Lyra's human shape could be seen within the swirling energy. "It stunned," the being said, its voice echoing with both triumph and sadness. "The threat is over, but our journey is just beginning." Admiral Venn stepped forward, his face a mix of reverence and uncertainty. What happens now?" The being smiled, a gesture at once alien and deeply human. "Now we rebuild, we explore, we create a future where the boundaries between species, between energy and matter, between possibility and reality are not walls but bridges." As the fleet began the long process of assessing the damage and spreading the news of their victory, the merged being that was both Lyra and Lum gazed out at the newly born stars. "We have been given a rare gift," it said softly, "the chance to shake the cosmos anew, to seed it with life and knowledge, born from the union of two great civilizations." The being turned to the crew, its glowing eyes filled with hope and determination. "The road ahead will not be easy, but together we will forge a future brighter than any single species could have imagined." As the horizon set course for home, carrying with it the seeds of a new cosmic order, the merged being felt these human hearts swell with emotion. She had started this journey alone on a desolate planet, never imagining the wonders and challenges that awaited her now. As both more and less than human, she looked forward to the infinite possibilities that stretched out before them. The darkness had been vanquished, and a new age of light, of unity, of endless potential was dawning. The greatest adventure for Lyra and for all sentient beings was just beginning.